Since the beginnings of mankind, evil and downright despicable behaviors are known to have come and will continue to come in many different forms. It is not something that discriminates. It doesn't come from any one single culture, gender, race, or religion. It's always sitting, lingering in the minds of seemingly ordinary individuals, just waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike. In this video, we will be going over 4 instances in which TikTokers committed some of the most atrocious crimes imaginable. And in some cases, these individuals would then go on to use these situations for their own personal clout. Completely delusional in every way. With that, let's talk about some TikTokers who did terrible things, episode 19, Denise Frazier, otherwise known as Denise Frazier 619 on TikTok. Creator class type, loves dogs. Specialty, like really loves dogs. Claim to fame, trust me, you really don't want to know. But for those of you who do, I'm not even gonna lie to you, this is without a doubt one of the most peculiar and offbeat situations we have ever talked about in the entirety of this series. I mean, yes, we've covered a lot of truly dark and disturbing topics, just listen to yourself and let me know what you think. So when looking into Denice's history on this platform, we can fairly quickly find a bunch of these alternate accounts, with the most recently used being the one that ends in 619. And although her name is most definitely in the headlines as of now, she may have about 10,000 followers between all of these accounts. However, we all know by now this isn't why you're here, but I must tell you, this video is about to take a downright weird and disturbing turn. You see, back in February of this year, 2023, some girl out of Mississippi posted a Snapchat of herself quite literally getting it on with a dog. And before she could end up taking it down, it had been screen recorded, reposted, and redistributed amongst many different forms of social media, going absolutely viral in the process. Now, right off the bat, a few people began directing their audiences towards the TikToker's account, where she would ultimately begin posting these videos trying to put the rumors to rest that this was in fact her. Well, before too long, people began to take note of a couple of videos posted to her account. And while I can play them for you here, I do in fact have to mute them for copyright reasons. But for those of you who are just listening, I will describe them for you. The first video in question starts off showing her seductively sitting on her bathroom counter, then showing a bunch of money, followed by clips of her dogs. Then all of a sudden, about 3/4 of the way through the video, she shows a vibrator in her hand while still flashing through these clips of her dogs playing and then sleeping immediately afterwards. While the next video shows her quite literally twerking in front of her dog's face. Well, it was at this point a lot of people ultimately knew Denise had to be the one that posted that video, as one of the dogs in question also looked extremely similar, nay, dare I say, identical. But then, in the beginning of April of this year, Denise was arrested for filming and posting that video that had gone viral, while her dogs were taken to an animal hospital nearby. Sergeant J.D. Carter of the Jones County, Mississippi Sheriff's Office had the following to say: JCSD is in possession of several videos so graphic we are not at liberty to release them or even discuss the contents of said videos. In my 17 years of law enforcement, this is one of the most disturbing cases I have ever investigated. The investigation into this case is still ongoing at this time. With that, Denise has officially been booked under charges of animal cruelty as well as charges of unnatural intercourse with a bond of $25,000. Yep, placing her on the list of TikTokers who did terrible things, episode 20. So this one is another one of those particularly strange episodes. Reason being, it is the first instance in which 3 different creators are all being added to the list at the same time. Renisha Gretsch, Shania Gretsch, and Chloe Denman. Creator class types, I want to be famous. Specialty, for all the wrong reasons. Claim to fame, literally torturing their so-called friend in one of the most brutal acts of betrayal on the entirety of the platform. Well, on March 16th of 2023, the 3 TikTokers lured 14-year-old Kirra Hart to one of the teen's homes under the false pretense of attending a sleepover. It was during the course of that night, Kirra was literally bound and tortured for several hours, being slapped, hit, even going as far as to attack her with a knife several times during this session. And what's more is they would film quite a bit of these actions, going as far as to literally post the evidence online. Well, after everything was said and done, those girls threw her out of the house, where her parents would later find her in serious need of medical attention. Just a few days later, the photos of the aftermath would go absolutely viral, sparking outrage in the days preceding the attack. And to make things even more sadistic, the 3 TikTokers would go on to use this as a ploy to become famous, essentially acting like they're these horrible versions of Jake Paul. But make no mistake, it's not like they talked smack about someone and then got into a little scuffle. They quite literally lured someone into one of their parents' homes, then proceeded to torture their victim and threw her out of the house, placing them on our list of TikTokers Who Did Terrible Things, episode 21. Jill Hudson, otherwise known as Alabama Mermaid on TikTok. Creator class type, loves Jesus. Specialty, I'm just a good old-hearted Christian woman. Claim to fame, you most definitely are not. So this is yet another one of those cases where things on social media just aren't always as they seem to be. You see, Jill, or Alabama Mermaid, began posting on TikTok back in January of 2022. With that in mind, many of her uploads revolved around her devotion to being this sort of born-again Christian with a somewhat troubled past. Or at least, this is how she had been portraying herself to the roughly 7,000 individuals following her account. You see, back in October of 2021, her husband Jason was arrested on 5 charges of possession of obscene matter depicting a child under the age of 17. That is a mouthful. And as time went on, they would actually end up indicting him on a total of 76 counts of possession of CP. It was at this point Jason exclaimed that much of the so-called evidence found by forensic investigators had been planted. And shortly thereafter, the Alabama law enforcement agency would begin to take over the case. Well, while they found no evidence that anything had been fabricated or planted as he stated, they did in fact find evidence, quite literally showing Jill participating in some of these acts. What's more is, upon her arrest, she would go on to call a family member on a recorded line, asking them to go to her home and begin the process of destroying evidence. Well, wouldn't you know it, law enforcement personnel had quite literally been listening in to that very phone call. And this, coupled with the severity of her actions, along with the threat she poses to the victim, which is essentially her own daughter, Jill is currently being held on no bond until the date of her trial. With that in mind, Jill currently faces a slew of charges, including but not limited to the following: SA of a child under the age of 12, as well as several other charges involving, let's just say, using objects to perform some of these actions. Now, a lot of these sources have been bouncing back and forth, somewhat implying these heinous actions were committed against her own child. However, when you do look into a lot of these sources, there doesn't seem to be a 100% confident truth behind all of these statements. In addition to this, somewhere between all of this absolute madness, Jason had posted bail and is currently out on the run. As a matter of fact, since the date of Farren's arrest, the U.S. Marshals have gotten involved in the search for Jason. Further investigation by the ALEA has provided enough evidence to charge him with acts he performed on his very own family, as well as possession of the material itself. I leave you with this.
If they cared about you, and I'm talking to myself, but if they truly cared about you, then hurting you would hurt them. And if hurting you doesn't hurt them, then they're not for you.
Becoming just another one of those TikTokers Who Did Terrible Things, episode 21. Sara Stewart, otherwise known as Mrs. Stewart 0718 on TikTok. Creator class type, tell me I'm pretty. Specialty, fishing for your compliments. Claim to fame, strap in and get ready, because this one goes deep. Well, Sara began posting on TikTok back in April of 2020. That being said, most of her content could quite literally be deemed as compliment fishing, along with the occasional post involving her husband or a few of her children. But I think by now we all realize this isn't why you're here. In the evening hours of October 30th, 2022, emergency services out of Spartanburg, South Carolina receive a phone call in regards to a child in serious need of medical attention. Upon arrival, they are told a 6-year-old child by the name of Aiden has fallen off a recliner, banged his head on the floor, and is currently having a seizure. And well, upon attending to this child, it was quickly discovered the situation was getting more and more grim with every second that passed by. Reason being, he was also experiencing heart palpitations and his breathing was getting extremely sporadic. They would try their best to keep him alive as they headed to the hospital, but unfortunately, not too long after they arrived, Aiden would pass away. Now I'm sure at this point, a lot of you are thinking, why are you telling us this story about a parent that went through something extremely unfortunate and traumatizing as this? Well, here's the thing. Emergency services as well as responding officers had taken note that Aiden's living conditions were extremely filthy. In addition to this, multiple bruises were found all over him in various stages of healing. It was at this point an investigation into the death of Aiden began, and in due time, one hell of a disturbing truth would be revealed. The official coroner's report stated Aiden had more than enough diphenhydramine in his system to kill a full-grown adult. And for those of you who don't know, this is the active ingredient found in Benadryl. Now, Sara has since confessed to giving him copious amounts of the substance due to the fact he was hyperactive, and she had been doing this for quite a while, so in order to keep him sedated the way she wanted him to be, she would have to continue giving him more and more every time, till eventually she killed him. Now, the story doesn't necessarily end here. You see, neither Christopher nor Sara were Aiden's biological parents, as his biological mother signed over rights to Christopher upon going to prison. And it's important to note, CPS has since came out and stated the transfer of guardianship did not occur through any sort of licensed foster care system. In other words, this had been done privately through herself and Christopher. And here's where things get even worse. Between the date of Aiden's death and Sara's arrest, she would go on to post videos like this, even going as far as to call him her very own son, placing her on the list of TikTokers Who Did Terrible Things, episode 22. Brenton Fillers, otherwise known as the TikTok trickster, on pretty much every single media source that has posted an article about this incident. Creator class type, debatable. Specialty, con man. Claim to fame, the following series of events. So I will tell you this, there is a bit of a technicality with this one. TikToker in question allegedly had several different accounts. However, not a single one of them had ever been associated with his real name, even giving a hint as to where he may have been from or who he actually was. Well, according to multiple sources, Brenton has been conning women and swindling his way through life for the past 30 years, often posing as this sort of wealthy businessman in order to get close to them. Essentially, for the past few years, he had been using the platform in order to meet women and convince them to invest in his supposed business ventures, thus promising high rates of returns on those investments. However, as stated by police, Fillers would then use that money for his own personal expenses, keeping up a rather lavish lifestyle without ever having to do any real honest or actual work. Well, over the past 3 decades, his crimes include, but are not limited to, stealing a car in Tennessee, stealing property in Alabama, multiple counts of credit card fraud in Arkansas as well as other states, stealing over $42,000 from a single victim in Texas over the span of 3 weeks, but worst of all, he is also wanted for the R-word of an 11-year-old boy in Texas. Well, Fillers was recently arrested in Kentucky on April 14th of this year, after a doctor allegedly used his phone to contact friends and family. Well, little did he know he would actually be contacting a victim in the process, and that victim then got a hold of law enforcement, directing them to that medical center. Chief Barber of the Spanish Fort PD in Alabama had the following to say: "He's a criminal and a low-life predator. Not only a con artist, but he's wanted for the R-word of an 11-year-old boy in the state of Texas. And what's scary to me is that he's living with these women, visiting these women who have kids, and well, while we do have him in custody, he has been in custody over 30 times. This needs to stop." The latter comment of which refers to the fact that although yes, he had been arrested on several occasions, he'd always just bail himself out, skip town, and resume hiding out under one of more than 27 different aliases. So that's it, y'all. That is going to do it for this episode of TikTokers Who Did Terrible Things. If you learned something new, consider leaving a like, as it greatly helps project this video out into other audiences. I thank you for your time, and we will see you on the next one. I sincerely hope you have an amazing whatever it is, wherever you may be. Peace out.